Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to Startup Boston Week. My name's Andy. I am one of the organizers behind this event. I'll also be your MC today. On my screen, I'm about to put up the list of sessions that are going on right now. So why am I putting this up, you may ask? Well, the answer is because if you wanted to go to one of these, if you didn't want to be in DIY or don't do it yourself, this is your chance to click away. This is DIY or do it yourself. So if you are here for that, we're super excited to. If not, you can click on agenda above and go to virtual possibilities. With that being said, for those of you that are here and super excited, I'd like to start by thanking our speakers for being here. This has been a lot of work for us to put in. Both the speakers and the volunteers have put in and organizers have put in a lot of their time to make this happen. So we're really excited to have them here and give their wonderful knowledge and background to this session. We also, because they have so much knowledge that they want to share with you all, we can't necessarily get it all out through just our questions. We'd love to have your questions to ask them. You can see there's a tab to your right. It's called Q&A. That is where you can post all the questions that you have. We really encourage it. We think it's a great part of Startup Boston. It's your chance to interact with people who have been there and done that. So please go ahead and use that feature. We also have an awesome social media competition that's going on today. So pay attention to what our speakers are saying. If you like something they said and you find a quote that's particularly insightful, you think, go ahead and quote them on Twitter using the hashtag SBW2021, and I'll put that in the chat later. You'll be entered to win one of $500 gift cards to a Black-owned business in Boston. So with that, I'm super excited to hand it over to Kieran to be our moderator for today.
Hey, Andy, thanks very much, mate. Really excited to be talking here today. I'm Kieran Gillen, CEO and co-founder of Machinery Partner. We're a startup located right here in Boston, and we recently graduated from Techstars Boston. So really excited to be here with the ecosystem and chatting with some great founders today. Guys, if you can just go around and start introducing yourselves. We'll go with the left of my screen, which is Becca.
Thanks, Kieran. Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Goldklang, she, her, hers. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Drizzly, and Drizzly is North America's biggest alcohol e-commerce marketplace.
Perfect. Paulo.
Thank you, Kieran, for the introduction. Paulo Garcia, CEO and co-founder of KairoPen. KairoPen is an MIT spin-out operating at the Engine in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And we're building a platform to make cell engineering more accessible in order to really demonstrate therapeutic potentials of cell therapies with therapeutics and academic pioneers.
Awesome. That sounds great. Fischel, you're up, mate.
Nice. So this is really awkward, but I couldn't hear anything Paulo was saying. But I can hear everybody else. So this is going to be a really interesting panel because I'm going to be like nodding at you talking, but I actually have no idea what you're saying. I'm Vish, CEO of Sophia, Sophia.world. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool. We built a metaverse for workplace. So if you think about like World of Warcraft, it's basically that, but for work. Lots of teams and companies are moving online, fully remote or distributed now. So we built like a very productive game world for people to sort of move into. And so we've got, Fortune 20 companies, startups all over the world who have been moving into our neighborhoods, which is kind of cool. That's me.
Perfect. And last but not least, Sridhar.
There we go. All right. Hi, I'm Sridhar Iyengar, or Sri, CEO and founder of Elemental Machines. We're a industrial IoT company servicing the biotech, pharma, and synthetic biology world. So think smart labs, smart factories, smart clinics, so on and so forth.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, listen, it's awesome to get jumping right into it, and we'll get started with some questions. As you guys know, this is DIY or don't do it yourselves. So building platforms, infrastructure, and strategic partnerships as a startup. So we're going to jump into some questions, and we'll get some views from the panelists here. So a lot of companies, they'll describe themselves as offering a platform. Where do you draw the line on what is and what is not a platform? Shri, why don't we start with you, mate?
Yeah, so there's actually two ways to think about this, or at least two ways I think about it. There's a platform in terms of, are you offering something as a platform to the outside world, to customers, or do you yourself have a platform that you can rapidly build products onto? So I kind of look at it that way. That's sort of the distinction. And if you're offering a platform to the outside world as a product, then really the question is, do you have all the tools, the accessories, the enablements, the SDKs, the APIs, documentation, all of that, so that third parties can use bits and pieces of your SDK, or basically, are you providing a Lego-like system where other people can build on top of that? If they can't build on top of that and generate their own business, their own revenue models, it's not really a platform. Now, that same thing looking inwards is, do you have some type of secret sauce that allows you to very rapidly build new products? And that could be some proprietary data sets that you can use for drug development. So all of a sudden you can bang out multiple different types of products very rapidly. So a mentor of mine years ago said something very, very, that stuck with me, which is products don't really change industries. Infrastructure and platforms are what actually change industries. But he mentioned to me that the problem is nobody buys a platform. So you need to somehow turn a product into a platform. And the obvious examples there are the Apple ecosystem with iOS and all that, and Facebook as a platform, so on and so forth. So it's really around, can you rapidly do something yourself, or can you enable new businesses and new ideas to be created with building blocks that you're bringing to the market?
That sounds awesome. Vishal, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was super comprehensive and really, really well said. It's really easy to think about things in like simple, like dichotomous frameworks. So for example, like, do you plug into other people, or do they plug into you, or do you provide one feature or lots of features, and how much of the value chain do you cover? Like, all of those things are questions you could ask yourself as you're debating, oh, are we a platform or not? But I think first of all, that's very simplistic. I think, Sridhar, your answer is, I think, the better way to think about it. And so don't get caught in the mistake of oversimplifying. If you do, it's really easy to get caught up there. So I would tend toward the more complex answer. One thing I would caution folks, though, is like similar with sort of any machine learning application in any startup, or any like AI application in any startup. Most people think they need things that they don't necessarily need yet, or don't need to be thinking about yet. And there's this huge period of time, I guess, over 2018 to 2020, I guess, when everyone was like, oh, I have to have machine learning in my startup or in my software or whatever. But actually, no. But it's okay to be thinking about it. And so the same risk, I think, is present on a conceptual level with a platform, where you just risk focusing on things that you don't necessarily need to focus on yet. And instead, maybe you should think about like making sure that your value proposition is really good and solves a problem. And if your value proposition is being a platform, then great. So you should think about it early. But if your value proposition isn't being a platform, and instead it's like you want to grow into being a platform, or covering so much of the value chain, or solving problems that a platform would solve, then you should focus on the today while also respecting where you're going, but just trying not to get too far ahead of yourself until you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you just risk spreading yourself too thin in the early days, when all of your timing, your money, like your people, all of that focus is really, really critical to keep concentrated early.
Really good, yeah. And I think that the issue always is, sometimes when you talk about strategic partnerships, they always seek some sort of exclusivity arrangement. So how do you balance the risks and rewards of committing to one large partner versus leaving yourself open for more? Becca, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a definitely tricky balance. And we definitely look at things sort of more holistically within the different business units at Drizzly. So my team is focused largely on BevAlc suppliers. And often they want to be, the exclusive spirit of a program that we're doing. But when it comes to the Drizzly platform, we know that trust is really important for consumers, and competition supports that. It reflects the real world. So it's the same with our retail partners. When we first launched in Boston, we had exclusive zones for each retailer. And after a couple of years, as we were expanding, we realized that, evolving to a marketplace, the model that we have today, increases that trust in the platform, and conversion actually increased with each store that a customer saw when they were shopping. So when we offer customers a choice, whether it be the stores they're browsing from or the products that they want to buy, we know that it increases, the authority that Drizzly has, the trust that consumers have in the platform, and that benefits all of our partners. We also believe that competition actually proves our value. We know partners, our retail partners, our supplier partners, they're not only working with us, and we know they're comparing the performance they see on Drizzly to Drizzly's competitors. So we're choosing to focus our energy on being the best in class, delivering upon what we promise, and being really transparent with our partners. And that's what's driven the success we have in these relationships. We work with some of the biggest alcohol companies in the world, and we've done so for 4, 5, 6 years at this point. That being said, exclusivity can be leveraged in certain instances to drive, outcomes for Drizzly that giving up kind of that option in the short term is worthwhile. So we subscribe to a crawl, walk, run approach at Drizzly. We want to make sure that we are aligning the goals between our companies, that we're, testing something on a smaller scale before we devote engineering resources to something and the time necessary for one of these bigger deals. And they also want to make sure that we are aligning with the best companies in whatever vertical or industry that we're looking to partner with.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. We found it as well with we deal more with construction machinery, and we're dealing with dealerships that have been there for hundreds of years, and it's trying to break down that cycle of having exclusivity within there. But really, when you look at it from a step back, it's the customer who's the only one who suffers through this. Customers in certain industries don't have the choice that a lot of people do in retail or any other industry. And it's about opening up that market. We found that a lot. Paulo, can you jump in here, mate? What do you think?
Absolutely. And in the industry that we're operating, we're in the life sciences, biotech industry. And one of the things that we have being confronted with is that particular choice. And there's additional aspects of that choice that are relevant for when that opportunity presents itself. For example, do I fundraise, or is there an opportunity to receive a large upfront payment that can actually carry the company through some milestones that would be relevant to hit? And so that time component is important because it depends on where you are in your development cycle. In addition, there is such a thing. There is exclusivity and non-exclusivity. Those are the extremes. But you could think about exclusivity that is time-based, in which you're given a potential partner a couple of years of head start from the competition. And that's something that you can leverage, because as the markets evolve, as you learn more about your own technical capabilities, there could be an opportunity to reevaluate if you want to maybe go a non-exclusive type of approach. So that's something else to keep in mind. And the way to think about it, at least the way we like to position these opportunities, is to maintain some optionality, meaning making sure that the field that you're talking about partnering, it's such that you can still have additional fields in which to make an impact, in which to continue your development, and potentially, have a partnership that is not necessarily along your critical path, but something that you're eventually going to pursue that could generate some, validation of your technology, some revenue for the company, some nice press release and exposure as you're building the big business that you're trying to build. So there's a lot of flavors, and I wanted to just make sure that there's still aspects that are being considered in these important decisions for the company, but exciting because they generate opportunities.
Perfect. And Vishal, I'd love to get your opinion on this as well. Oh, Vishal is having some issues, I think. Okay. Let's see. We'll just jump on to the next question. We'll get him back when he comes around again. So, have you guys thought, or do you think how do you think about licensing technology and tools versus producing a more complete solution with it? Sridhar, why don't you start us, mate?
Yeah. So my personal opinion is, the industries that I've been involved in, licensing is not really attractive. Now, you go to somewhere like drug development and biotech, licensing out your molecules is the de facto standard way of scaling and doing business development partnerships. But if you talk about maybe technology companies, software, IoT that I'm involved in, the issue with licensing out is that you're putting the onus on your customer, your partner, to do all the development work and take all the risk. Now, that there's actually a tie-in with the previous two questions, which was platform and exclusivity. If you are developing a platform-based technology, then the opportunity there is to give kind of a almost like a finished product to different customers and license that out as a technology sort of the Intel side. So it all depends on what part of the value chain you want to capture. So the Intel Inside is a great example. It's a very versatile platform. It's a microprocessor. Anyone can build anything on top of it. So that lends itself very well to a licensing opportunity. Whereas if you're building something a little bit more bespoke, a little bit more specialized, then licensing something out puts a lot of development risk and burden on the partner. So it really is a case-by-case thing. Some industries like biotech and drug discovery, drug development, it's de facto standard. Other industries, it's not. And so I think the decision to license or not is very specific on the kind of company you're building and the kind of risk reward that your partner is willing to take.
Absolutely. Becca, what's your view on this from Drizzly's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's sort of this case by case. Do we want to move quickly or do we want to have ownership? Drizzly's done a mix of both of those over the years, especially as we go deeper into various parts of the business. But Drizzly itself, the core platform, is an example of building that complete solution. Some of our competitors in this space, they actually have chosen to white label their technology either to BevAlc suppliers or to the retailers themselves instead of building that platform. So they handle the back end while their customer, that retailer or the supplier, they own the front end, but they also own the customer. So we're all connecting inventory from the retailers for customers to buy, but obviously there are very different models in the same space. So, I mean, at Drizzly, we believe that you need to own the customer to win. So that's what we're trying to do by building that platform. We want to protect the consumer experience. That's core to our business. So that's why we've chosen to keep a lot of this technology proprietary to us. That said, right, there are other instances in which there are reasons to license tools or technology both outwardly and inwardly. So an outward example, we have a ton of first-party data. We license that data to BevAlc suppliers so that they can unlock more insights around the e-commerce customer, the independent retailer market, which they don't get from legacy data providers. We do this, obviously in a controlled and compliant way. And we actually leverage a third party to create an embedded solution so that we're doing all the work on our side and it's shared safely outwardly to our partners. We also work with another partner for a data feed. And this allows the data that we have to go way beyond just the e-commerce teams that we work with at these brands. We know this data is valuable across their organizations. And with this data feed, we're able to flow more seamlessly into that organization, thus, protecting the value even further. That reduces a ton of the friction and it just gets the value to the teams more quickly. So, the data visualization tool, we work with a very large SaaS provider for that. Same with the data feed partner. And then when we look inwards, right, we run an ad monetization business. We've been doing that very manually for a long time. And as I'm sure no one's surprised, the demand for our service and our platform has really grown in the last 1.5 years, 2 years. So we decided that that was something that we could outsource to meet that demand from an advertising perspective. So we're working with a well-established ad server in the industry to kind of get that system up and running, to be able to service more partners, smaller businesses, and kind of meet that moment while we think about, okay, is this a long-term solution, or do we want to start building our own?
Absolutely. Sounds great. Paolo, I'd love to get your view on this.
Yeah, Kieran, and the way really we think about it is, strategically, if we're building a platform that we believe will create the disruption that we're trying to achieve, we want to own as much of that as possible. The way we think about licensing is if it is something that is not in the direct path, and this is licensing out some of our platform capabilities for other markets that we could potentially be getting into in 3, 5, 7 years, and that with a partner, they can accelerate that development, again, generate some opportunities for revenue or for income for the company, but not necessarily in the direct line of path, unless it's a technology that we're licensing in to help enable what we're trying to build and that we're trying to make a big impact in. That's how we're currently thinking about it. And we do get quite a significant amount of interest in licensing our technology. But the challenge is that basically would be moving towards an exit at this stage, and we're too early in our life cycle to be thinking about the main aspect or capabilities of our technology to be implemented into another platform. So that strategically is how we're thinking about it for opportunities that are things that we want to do in the long term and that can be accelerated with a partner. That's really how we're thinking about it.
Perfect. And I guess for all our perspectives, we have strategic partners, we have our teams, we have our customers. One other people that we have watching us quite intently are investors. So, when pitching to investors, what have you found to be the most effective ways of demonstrating traction with potential users or partners? Vishal, I think if you're back, we can jump to you for this one, mate.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Nice. And I can hear both Sridhar and Paolo. This is a good day. Yeah, exactly. Let's see here. So, I think investors are, obviously I don't want to sort of lump everyone into one category, but as a tagline, job title, investor, there's a couple of things that they're specifically looking for. Can we sort of generate a great return for our LPs? And is this something that we're excited about? Does this fit our thesis? And yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the day, you're going to get different buckets of investors with different risk tolerances, right? So for example, some are oh, we want to see really established metrics on this thing or that thing. And maybe those are the Series A investors, right? And then you might have some that are further along and they say, oh, we want to make sure that there's a repeatable business model. Everything is packaged up and tight and ready for sort of the next stage, whether it's an IPO or an acquisition or whatever it is, or just crazy growth, right? And those might be the Series B and beyond. And then there's the people who are oh, we just we know that you're going to build something crazy, and we look at the people and the market opportunity, and we feel like there's maybe a disruption in the future, and that's kind of what we're going to put our money down on. And those are obviously the super early people. And so depending on which group of folks, and even within those three buckets, there's stratification based on risk tolerance, maverickism, how many left-handed people are in the investment crew. There's all of these different things that you can stratify people on. And so across the board, though, there's just how money talks, there's just metrics will always be your best friend if you really want to convert people really quick, because nobody can argue with that, right? It's money talks. And if it's not money, it's engagement. And if it's not engagement, it's something that's going up and to the right that is core to your business. And so from our perspective at Sophia, we're building in an environment that is rapidly shifting. Sort of the world of work is like, it's like this giant earthquake hit the whole world of work. And now we're kind of building on top of the rubble, which is where teams will sort of move their headquarters. And so for us, it's like the metrics or the types of, I guess, what's the word that you use here? Like demonstrating traction is different for us than it would be for another company. But for us, we need to get like 1 part believer and 1 part sort of metrics. So can the investors that you are looking to partner with, do they see the world the same way as you? So that's really important. Can you show them numbers that look really good and defend why those numbers are really important to your business growth? Okay, so that's another thing. And then the third thing is like really basic, but like, can you show them your product and have them test it out? Because like, if they can really get a tangible feel of something, people in general are much more likely to sort of empathize with where it could go. And it kind of makes your story a lot simpler. So that's like an investor perspective. I should stop talking because I'm like talking too much, but just one quick note on partners is if you can show investors that the partners that you're working with, they kind of work just like customers in that here's like the land and expand model from a partnership point of view. We're going to start here. We're super aligned and we're all kind of we're building the same future together. And this is the slice that they're going to take. And this is the slice that we're going to take. And here's how we fit really tightly together. And here's the expansion opportunity. And here's why they're excited about it. And you know what I mean? Like if you can tell the story, and obviously it's a truthful story that actually works really well, then like no investor is not going to get excited about that, provided it's like in their vertical, right? So telling a really tight story, showing how all the pieces fit together really well, no matter if the pieces come from customers or if the pieces come from partners, like it's all the same as long as there's a good sort of bottom line outcome aligned with where your business is going.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it really emphasizes the point that you need to run a process when you're thinking of investment. It's really important to run that process and start with your investors you don't have your interest in to sort of get your pitch aligned and start to refine that, start to get the questions. So when you get up to your tier A investors who you're really your pitch is tight and they're aligned with your values. And then you can both build those KPIs together and build on success for the next round. Paulo, I'd love to get your opinion on this, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of things here. One of the things that we actually have done in the past in terms of investors, it's to try to build relationships that are, much sooner than when we're actually doing the fundraise. And at that point, actually ask the question, what are some of the things that you would need to see or that you would like to see in order to appreciate the traction that is being generated? And then, periodically go back with updates that are actually addressing some of the guidance that you received from these investors. And so that's just overall one of the things that I wanted to share in that fundraising, strategic relationships, collaborations are all about developing relations with other human beings, and being engaged is very critical. In our industry, the sales cycles are tremendously long. We're talking about 6, 9, 12 months to potentially convert some of the collaborators or the customers. And so from that perspective, part of the job is to demonstrate the traction or progress of that traction without necessarily having the commercial home run deal in the pipeline. And a couple of those things can be through paid evaluations. Somebody mentioned Money Talks. And so paid evaluations or pipeline demonstration as to, CDA sign, MTAs in negotiations, MTAs executing, them showing that in an anonymous manner, or if some of these collaborators actually allow you to use their name, that demonstrates a lot of the path towards what you're trying to build. In addition to maybe even having some of these partners actually speak with the one or two top investors that you're going after, because you also have to respect or protect the collaborations that you have ongoing, but that have demonstrated traction about the performance of that technology, about the potential that it has in the field, without overburdening the partners. A press release is always powerful. If you can get a press release with a partner that actually demonstrates that traction, and you can maybe leverage the ability to do a press release with a partner for maybe a lower type of monetary aspect, because a lot of these evaluations are cost recovery in the first place, and if you can either get a press release or even just post a logo on your website that is non-descriptive, nothing describing what you're actually doing with a partner, all of those things help in generating traction towards a successful fundraise. And so just a couple of quick aspects of things that we have implemented that is working positively.
Really interesting, mate. Really interesting. And I think, when speaking of platforms, they're so all encompassing. So while we generally hear the advice is to focus on a specific first application for startups, a platform, it's inherently geared towards a number of applications, users, and markets. So how do you balance this in your pitches to potential customers, investors, and internal developers? Vishal, do you want to take this one, mate?
Can I just jump back to the last question for 2 seconds? I would say 2 seconds, and it's longer than that invariably. But the point I just want to make there is I'm assuming everybody who's watching, or most people that are watching, are reasonably early stage. This is Startup Week Boston, for example, or for After All. I do want to say that it's really important to think about the fundraising experience as a two-way matching process. So yes, you do want to show traction and demonstrate traction and yada 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 to the investors, but at the same time, the power position, and I don't mean to use divisive language like that, but the power position should lie with the founders, right? With the company and not the investor, because even though at the end of the day, you're going to join a partnership together and you're going to start a little team together, they're joining your team. You're not necessarily joining their team, right? They're joining your team. And so it's important for you to demonstrate traction, and it's important for you to check all those boxes for them, but they don't be afraid to have the courage to make them check your boxes, right? Because if you're going to jump into this multi-year relationship with them, in the best case, they better be aligned with where you're going, and you have to make sure of that. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for some serious not good times, because there's going to be ups and downs, right? I know this is about DIY or don't DIY, but you can't talk about pitching to investors without commenting on the fact that you don't want to get yourself into a supplicating position where you're just here, look at all of my metrics, here you go, can I have some I won't swear, but can I have some whatever, that guy with the please sir, can I have some more, whatever that book is. You don't want to get into that kind of position, right? You need to see this as a two-way relationship of equals. But anyway, I'd just be remiss if I didn't rant about that a little.
I think we've all got stories like that, haven't we? When we first started off and we're running around trying to get any investor, and you sort of learn very quickly as to what terms are good for you, and it shows the importance of going out and actually getting traction. I mean, I know for myself, when I started off running about Belfast in Ireland, trying to generate money where there isn't a huge VC community, and you really are walking with your cap in your hand, trying to get terrible valuations, giving away lots of your company, and they're still making you jump through hoops, and our what we done was we just told them all we didn't want money. We went and we generated traction with our customers. We went out and we started getting sales, and and that's when the power play came over to us. So Vishal, I completely agree with what you're saying here. I think that is an important point to raise. So I think we'll run over this question again because I'm sure it got lost in the ether there. So while we generally hear the advice to focus on a specific first application for startups, a platform is inherently geared towards a number of applications, users, and markets. How do you balance this in your pitches to potential customers, investors, and internal developers? Vishal, we'll let you go with this one.
Really, you want me to talk again? I mean, I'm happy to pass the mic. Let's see here. I think as long as you're true to yourself, you can't really go wrong. You just have to like be able to articulate your vision really well, know how you're going to get there from a roadmap strategy point of view, and know how to prioritize really, really well. As long as you can show people like, hey, here's how we're starting. This is the value it provides. Try to get around that like dreaded or solve for that dreaded like chicken egg problem like you get sometimes in two-way marketplaces. Like do you provide value to your first set of users immediately, even in a vacuum? Like as long as you can sort of keep that equation true for the lifetime, I guess, of your company as you're continuing to build, then that's great. That's one way to keep that balance and be successful. Obviously, when I say be successful, like it's never that easy. It's a figure of speech. And then the other thing is like, if you do need time to set up some form of two-way marketplace, especially because we're talking about platforms here, some of them probably are, of the audience members dealing with two-way marketplaces, like as long as you have a defensible plan aligned with your sort of roadmap, your strategy, your vision, that, you know, you're going to take X amount of time to build up one side and you're going to incentivize the other side so that you make sure they play ball as well, within a reasonable time frame, then, you know, all advice is conventional, but like every business is different, and that's the funny thing about advice. But yeah, I'll pass. I mean, Becca, I'm sure you have like lots of wisdom here because you literally build an amazing platform.
Well, thank you. It wasn't just me, of course. I think a lot of what you said, and Paolo, you said this a while ago too, is just remembering that the relationships that you're forming externally and internally, they're with other human beings, and thinking through, Michelle, what you were just saying too, like it's a two-way street when you're going to find investors. It's a two-way street when you're hiring someone, like they have to accept you as well. And so just thinking through like building a place to work that people want to work at, a product that people would want to use themselves. So focusing heavily kind of on like what the values are, what the mission is, and always coming back to that. And just to keep quoting you, Michelle, being true to yourself, I think really is important, and is probably important for a lot of people listening in to remind themselves, especially when things get really challenging. This is your passion. So like, remember that, and remember that we're all human beings at the end. So.
Perfect. And Paolo, what's your thoughts on it, mate?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this question to me and to my team is a really, really hard question, specifically because, you know, initially what we have been doing is we have been, you know, exploring the capabilities of the technology. And this means looking at different, you know, particular cells or particular genetic payloads that we're trying to introduce into the cells. And that exploration has enabled us to potentially work with a lot of different therapeutic companies. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we have realized is that no matter what we do in-house, and we can generate beautiful data that is very compelling for the biotech industry, and a platform device that we're building, for it to generate traction, the partner needs to be able to try it in their hands, with their scientists, with their biology. And so from that perspective, it's actually very hard for us internally to become experts at all of these other applications that are therapeutic in nature and that our entire companies focusing on them. And so from that perspective, you know, Vishal mentioned it, it's prioritized really, really well. And that's very difficult to do. but something that we are having strategic meetings about and selecting what are those partners that are aligned in terms of the technology, where it performs best, where the opportunity is attractive for where we're trying to go, and that there is, the timing component of getting the partners to evaluate the platform, so that we can then open up the opportunities down the line for others. So we started really broad. Right now we are focusing on 2 or 3 applications, as opposed to the 7 to 10 that we have done historically, just early stage when we were exploring what can the technology actually do. And the challenge or the blessing is that the technology can do a lot of things. So now we're actually having to say no to several opportunities to demonstrate the platform, create the value, and then eventually open up a little bit. But it has not been an easy process, and so I do not want to communicate to everybody that is a easy thing to do. Is very challenging to do.
Yeah, I think prioritization at this stage is completely key, because you need to know what to focus on. You need to know, and more importantly, you need to know when to stop and change and go to something else. It's all about trial and error at this stage. Sridhar, I know you're jumping on a plane right now. I'd love to get your thoughts, but I'm sure. Can you talk?
As long as you can hear me, I can talk.
we can hear you. Let's get your views.
All right. I think my headphones just died on me, but the basic idea of focus versus platform, focus versus broad, it does depend on if you're building a platform-based company or if you're building a product-based company. So if you're building a platform-based company, then what you need to do is to figure out how you're going to rapidly create very easy to take to market products and focus each one on a very small deliverable. If you're building a more focused product-based company, then what you have to do obviously is figure out how you're going to make your way to commercialize what you're building without diluting your efforts. One of the biggest risks you have as a startup is that you try to do too much all at once, and when that happens, the obvious thing is that you don't do anything really well. And hopefully you guys can still hear me. And so what we found is when it comes to enterprise products, enterprise software, the more tangible thing you can do is to start out by building a platform where you can rapidly iterate small incremental products and features, and you can put it out, get with a partner, do the Intel Inside, do an OEM, do a white label, something like that, so you can show traction. So the nice thing about this panel is that every single question you've asked is kind of interdependent and interrelated. They all kind of build to the same thing, which is how do you get a product into the market, and do you license it? Do you build a platform? Do you OEM it? Do you own the customer? And how do you show traction? And all of these things, none of these are unidimensional considerations, but the conventional wisdom is focus, focus, focus. But the problem with that is if you're building a platform, then focusing on one application is going to limit how you actually go to market and what partners you have. And I know I'm seeing everyone nodding their heads. And so whilst that's conventional wisdom for, say, a consumer product or an app, when you're building a more complex product, an ecosystem, a marketplace like what you have at Drizzly, you can't focus on one thing. You have to focus on the foundation platform and then very rapidly make incremental, or I dare say, very, very tangible implementations on your platform and show that to customers and investors so you can get the next round of credibility.
I love that. This guy is just dropping wisdom bombs from business class. I saw you walk left. You didn't walk right. I think can I just add to that real quick. Like you're totally bang on with the whole focus thing, because there's like the conventionally understood form of focus, which is like, oh, you should just do one thing and one thing really well. But there is such a thing, and there's such a period that's needed to like focus on finding out how to do the right thing, right? Focus on like figuring out what that subset of things are that you should be focused even more on. So like focus is a very interesting word, because you can focus in different ways on different things. And once you figure out what the right things are to focus on, then you go ahead and like unidirectionally focus. But before you have enough context to even know what you should focus on, your focus should be on finding out what that stuff is, right? It's the same way that like it's the same way that like undergrad works, right? Like you focus on your studying, and then that's like in your freshman year, and then you focus on focusing a little more in your sophomore year, and then you focus even more in your junior, and then your senior, and then you specialize if that's what you want to do. So it's just figuring out what to focus on and when, but it's all really about, it's still all a game of prioritization.
Yeah, Vishal, but you said something that, you know, it's something that we're going through right now, and you know, focusing on just taking the time to strategize what you want to focus on, it's really relevant. And you're absolutely right that it doesn't need to be, we're going to focus on just a single thing across the entire company. It could be the company is focused on achieving these goals with these three priorities, and that is the focus. If it doesn't fit in either of those three priorities, then it's out of focus. It doesn't have to be just one thing. And thank you for pointing it out. And it's something that we're actually working through right now at the company.
Yeah, I think prioritization is so important. I mean, I know in our company we break it down by each department, and then we have prioritization numbers from 1 to 5. You know, if it's a 5 or 4, we work on it now, you know, right down to 1 where we auction lot it and we send it off, and we worry about it at a different time. You know, it's just about trying to get the gears in motion to get that going. But totally agree with you guys. And we've had a pretty good question come in from Lisa in the audience, and she has asked, for those who are working with strategic partners, did you approach the partner or did they approach you? Have you rejected potential partners who approached you, and if so, why? Does Becca, I think, would you like to jump in on this one?
Yeah, definitely. So at the beginning of what is now our strategic partnerships team, there were a couple of us that came over from an agency. And so we actually leveraged our partnerships from our previous lives to start to reach out. And what we did was kind of talk through the frustrations that we had on the agency side when working for alcohol suppliers and how we could solve them through Drizzly's offering. So there was definitely a lot of kind of pitching, leveraging our networks to start with, until we could prove something out. And then at this point, we don't actually do any outbound work today. It's all inbounds. And again, this is from like a supplier standpoint. In the Bev Alc world, we have had some partners come to us, and it's not that we don't want to work with them. It's that we didn't have the solution for them at the right time, because we're trying to make sure that we're thinking about the end consumer as well as the brand, as well as the retailers that work with us. And so at a point where we were super small and it was a really niche product and they wanted to kind of paper the site with this product, we said that didn't make sense for our consumer base. It's not going to be successful for you. It's not going to be successful for us. We need to kind of think through what would be and build out that toolkit further. And that's where we are today. We're still building, but we have a lot more solutions and a lot more to come. So I think, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, thinking about what is going to prove successful for everybody involved in that partnership. And if it's not going to be successful for you, it's okay to say no. And if it's not going to be successful for your partner, tell them that, explain why, and that builds trust. And so the next time when it does make sense, you can go back and say, hey, we're ready to partner now, and hear the value props as to why. It's not fair to, say, yeah, let's partner, and then it be a disaster. And you kind of be like, well, I told you so, because you didn't. You accepted that partnership. So again, just keeping kind of like what the outcomes are, what are the benefits to both people. And if it doesn't fit, that's not a bad thing.
Absolutely. Anyone else like to jump in on that question?
I'm happy to jump in if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so we've actually done both. We've had partners approach us
we've approached them, and to Becca's point, we've also turned down partners for exactly the reasons, say that we don't have what it takes to make you successful, and it's just going to end in disaster if we walk down this road. But I think the best scenario was one of your mutual customers says, hey, you two folks need to work together because we want your solutions integrated. That puts a lot of gives a lot of gravitas to you as a startup. When your customers pulls in a big partner, and then they listen. And so that's happened a couple of times. But it's hard to engineer those situations. But the best situations are when you're out there giving presentations, giving talks, go to trade shows, become a thought leader in your space, and then the innovation groups out of these large corporates will come out of the woodwork and seek you out. And that's generally how we found the most successful partnerships.
Awesome. So I think,
can I jump in as well?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Do you want to?
No, jump.
All right. The 2-second thing, lol, is you're gonna find like it's gonna go both ways. So like when we think about who we want to partner with, we just look and say, hey, what do our users want, right? Like what do our members want? What do their customers want? Where they or their constituents want? Where along our roadmap and our vision do we want to think about partnerships? So there's going to be some element of you sort of initiating a partnership, and then not all partnerships are about cash, right? Some are about developing a relationship. Some are about like just expanding your product offering with like non-competitive folks. There's like lots of different ways to partner, and even there are ways to partner with folks who are competitive, because at the end of the day, your customer is the one who wins, and that should be front and center for you. Obviously, your mileage may vary, and you need to think carefully about when you do that. But then there's going to be times where like you get flooded with people who want to come to you for partnerships, and the funny thing about that is you will not be able to anticipate where these come from all the time. So it's just like, one of the beautiful things about Minecraft or Roblox or something like that is like you put a platform out there, people are going to use it in ways that you never would have dreamed of, right? It's gonna take on a life of its own. And I don't know if anybody's heard the new Bo Burnham song, Welcome to the Internet, but there's all sorts of crazy like ideas out there. I won't say crazy people, but crazy ideas out there. And some are really, really good and some are really, really bad. And you're going to hear about all of them if you have a product that people really want to use and can mold, in their opinion, to something that suits their needs. So you just have to don't get flattered. And instead, you should just think very disciplinedly, like, is this aligned with what we want to do? And then just do exactly what Becca just said, because I think that nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. We've done exactly the same, as all you guys. I think regardless of what industry you're in, the customer is front and center, and strategic partners need to really play in line with your customer's vision, not just your vision. And that's how people win. Well, I guess, because this is Startup Boston, how, if you had to go back to yourself when you were starting out, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were starting all over again? Becca, do you want to kick us off?
I feel like we should hear from some of these founders over here. So I'm gonna skip this one and pass it over to you guys.
Paulo.
Sure. One of the things that I wish I would have known is how difficult it is to actually raise money. And because of that, I think starting to engage with investors earlier on would be something that I would, really set myself up to do. We've come a long way, and certainly where we are right now, it's a different aspect. But starting out, I underestimated the amount of time that a CEO will spend speaking with investors. And so because of that, I think really setting up a way to improve that match for the stage, for the vision, for the check size, all of those things would really save some time for those founders looking to get started. So it takes a tremendous amount of effort and discipline. and I would do it a little bit differently.
Sridhar, what about you?
I think so. This is my third startup, and I have to say that there's a lot of lessons I've learned from the first two, but every startup is new and different. And I think the lesson I would have taken, I would have really taken to heart is that every startup is unique and different. I'd expected a lot of the same patterns to appear in startup number 3, and it turns out every startup is unique and different. There's maybe 10 or 15% of horrendously bad mistakes that you can learn from in the past, but every time I'm engaged in this and I work, I'm involved with other founders as well. That's kind of the same thing, is that just because you did it once or twice before doesn't mean the third time is going to be any easier. You're going to have completely new problems, and so there isn't as much that you can take that you've learned in the last two startups, other than the non-specific things like resilience and grit and perseverance. So other than the emotional aspects, every startup is absolutely different. And I wish I had had that mindset going into this one a few years ago.
Vishal.
Completely agree with what you both have said. I'll add two more things. One is you should know yourself extremely well, or at least be endeavoring to know yourself extremely well. So you need to know, like, what are the situations that you are like, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to understand and be able to predict how you would react in any given situation, because emotional management is extremely important. So can you stay level-headed? Can you stay even-keeled? Do you get upset? What makes you upset? What are the triggers? Like, what happens when you're really excited? What happens when you're really sad? How do you deal with that? Like, how do you talk to other people? How do you make other people feel? Like, all of those things about your own emotional regulation is extremely important. And so knowing that cold about yourself, and you never know, like, you're always sort of being put in new positions and new situations all the time, especially if things are going well, because you're kind of breaking into uncharted territory all the time. But having a really good foundation of your own behavior is extremely important, because that's what will get you through, and that's what will help your team to sort of stay anchored and feel very safe. And then the second thing is know how good your intuition is, and know, and I'm not saying it's good, I'm just saying know how good it is. It may be good and it may be bad, but you should know. And then it will help you to know how to feel when, I know there's like a lot of feelings here. It will help you to know how to feel when you don't listen to what you know is the right thing to do, right? And notice how much nuance is in there. So the one time that I've felt disappointed in myself as a founder is when I didn't do something that I knew was right in terms of direction for the company. It came back to bite me so fucking, sorry for the swearing, so hard that I will never, ever, ever repeat that ever again. And so I will now always do what I know is right. And it was just like a product direction thing. But like the point is that, like, if you know how you feel about your intuition and you know where it will take you if you don't do what you know is right, you will set yourself up for more trouble than you could have before. So anyway, it's just those two things, and they're mostly about knowing yourself, which is really important.
Absolutely. Perfect. Well, listen, this was awesome. I had a lot of fun. It was great hearing from you guys. A lot of really good nuggets to take home, and I've learned a lot, so I'm sure everyone else has. Andy, good to see you, mate.
Yeah. Also, one more thing before we head out. Thank you all to our wonderful panelists for doing this. They gave us their time to come out here, and they prepared ahead of time too. Thank you to all the organizers who made this possible, and thank you to you all in the audience for making this a great event. We really enjoy having you all here, asking questions, and having the interest to make this all possible. So hopefully this is not the end. I'm not just saying goodbye. I'll say see you soon. If you go to the agenda, you can see what else is coming up this week. There are tons more events, and so I say see you soon, and thank you again to our panelists for today.
Thank you for having us.